Hello again, I am Blunty, continuing my poking around at my ROG Ally review unit as we lead up to the launch in a couple of weeks. And if you are new around here, the way I do that is just I actually play the games like a normal person would play the game. No boring charts, no boring graphs, no theory crafting on what if you could do this or that, just what it actually does. So far, I've given you a full detailed review covering hardware and a bunch of gaming. I've asked the ROG Ally to do full-fat Steam VR, and it's done it without protest. And I've even tasked it with running ray tracing in games like Minecraft and Cyberpunk, and believe it or not, it only friggin' works. Well, I mean, of course, if you don't take me at my word, you can just watch those videos and see with your own eyes. But I'm pretty sure I've established myself as trustworthy around these here parts, right? But because of the type, style, and design intent of the ROG Ally, it will of course be constantly compared with the Steam Deck. And I mean constantly, like all the time, never ending. And unfortunately that also leads to a bit of console fanboy type infighting, which is just stupid. But the Steam Deck has had unprecedented success in this space of handheld gaming PCs. It is in all respects, except for performance, the market leader, so I've also been testing some games that are problematic in various ways for the Steam Deck, either from a performance, compatibility, or practical sense, because the Steam Deck is the touch point. It is the bar against one measures such devices. So today I've got a few more of those for you, ones that you guys have actually requested for me to test. Now, I can't test everything you asked me to test because, quite frankly, I don't own all the games you want me to test, but I'm doing what I can. So, thumbs up, comment, sub, bell, all that sort of stuff, in appreciation for my hard work in playing video games. And if you do have a request, please do leave a comment. I might have it, I might not. It might be a free-to-play game. So let's kick off with Fallout New Vegas, a fan favorite for a very large number of Fallout fans. And it just popped as the free game at the moment on the Epic Launcher for the next little while. And I've had more than a couple of people ask me to test this game on the Ally, so serendipity there. Now, this game does run on Steam Deck and has a gold rating on ProtonDB, the place where such things are tracked, which is a B grade, basically, with platinum being an A grade, silver being C, and so on and so forth down the elemental chart. The issues on Steam Deck include having to manually select a specific version of the Proton compatibility layer, and bugs like crackling audio and out-of-sync audio, issues with input, issues with the launcher and not correctly launching in the correct resolution and having to fix that manually, and issues with the controller. But once you sort all that out, it works. And on the Ally, well, to quote the ever meme-clowned Todd Howard, it just works. Maxed out settings, 1080p native, no compromises, no scaling. It worked perfectly in the default performance mode, as far as the word perfectly can ever be applied to a Fallout game from Bethesda, Obsidian's involvement or not. We're locked to 60 FPS with the occasional Bethesda bob down below it, and we have the full and complete range of settings to fiddle with, and indeed dropping down to 720p if one were to want a longer playtime on battery using the 9-watt silent mode configuration. I did test that, but apparently I forgot to hit record when I was testing that it does work just fine. Of course it does. The problems on Steam Deck with this game are not performance related, it's compatibility issues. Now, Forza Horizon 3, which can also run on the Steam Deck, but it does not have a ProtonDB entry because the only way it can run on the Steam Deck is if you dual boot Windows onto the Steam Deck, which isn't all that difficult for a mildly experienced nerd, but the average Jill or Joe who just wants to play games by, installing a game and clicking on the button that says play, yeah, it's a whole damn faff. Now, originally, with the games I was testing under this umbrella, I intended to avoid comparisons to games with inherent platform compatibility issues like this, where the game itself just doesn't run on the platform, or, the anti-cheat system doesn't run on SteamOS or whatever, because it's a little unfair. But again, I did have a few direct requests to test this series, and frankly, this kind of compatibility issue is a fact of life for Steam Deck users. It's something they have to deal with, or not deal with as it were, and it can be a big fat gotcha for the less technically knowledgeable out there. Saw a Reddit post just this weekend of someone who just bought a Steam Deck and then decided to return it after discovering that apparently 80% of the games they want to play don't actually work on Steam Deck well or at all. Now, most big games releasing these days, and quite a lot of smaller titles, of course, are starting to take Steam Deck compatibility into account. It's a nice little tick box for their press releases. But one of the greatest things about PC gaming is the vast back catalogue of titles, stretching massively further back deeper and wider than any console's back compatibility mode can manage, and the fact is, the Steam Deck does have issues with that, quite often. The Ally has far fewer issues with that, just by nature of its operating system and standard controller configuration. In any case, as you can clearly see, Forza Horizon 3 runs great. At 720p it's nailed to 60 FPS, and at native 1080p with the same medium settings, anywhere from 40 to 60 FPS depending on the location. I've also recorded these particular game clips for this game locally on the Ally using its built-in game recording function, which ties into Xbox Game Bar, which is why the normal Ally performance overlay is missing. I did have it turned on, but it doesn't actually record. It's not captured by the built-in capture thingy. This is also why it's much more compressed than my externally recorded clips. The game doesn't look quite this fuzzy. But again, for those who've been asking, yes, the inbuilt game recording does work fine, and no, it doesn't hamper performance in any meaningful way. Next, Fantasy Star Online 2 New Genesis. This has a silver rating, or in other words, a C grade on ProtonDB, having some severe performance issues without a bunch of manual fiddling and tweaking and following guides and such. And the game's small UI and text is a very large issue on the Steam Deck's meager 800p screen. Readability of the UI is a very common complaint I saw when researching this one. And on the Ally, well, at 1080p with a mix of low and medium settings, you can find a pretty stable 40 FPS. I'd have tried the more demanding raid content, but man, this game is dead right now. At least at the level I left my character at when I bounced off this game like a year and a half, nearly 2 years back, I suppose. There are still plenty of people hanging out in the hub city, but it seems if you're not there doing the social thing, you're at other parts of the game, higher level parts of the game that have opened up since I last played. In any case, I was asked to test this one too, so I did. And while I don't think this game benefits much from it, if you do want to lock in on a solid 60 FPS, the default low settings get you there easily in the default performance mode. I just turned on a few more things here because I think 45 is a pretty decent target for this particular game, and frankly, it's just more pleasant to look at with better lighting and nicer shadows turned on. But this game is also an MMO, which means long play sessions are often a priority, so if you want that, lowest settings, 720p in the silent 9-watt power mode, and you'll still exceed 30 FPS at all times, and thanks to scaling to 1080p, even the text is still pretty readable. Although, if you're socially hanging out in the hub and not doing voice chat through Discord or something like that, you're probably going to want to customize that font size, because at this resolution on this screen, it is still hard to read. Minecraft Bedrock. Now, I've already made a video about Minecraft on the Ally, both the Java version and the Bedrock version. That video mainly focused on performance and shaders and ray tracing and whatnot, but something I didn't talk about much, beyond the fact that the Bedrock edition, or the Windows version of Minecraft, of course, can't run on the Steam Deck unless you set up a dual boot system, which we've already talked about. But it turns out there is another way Steam Deck users are playing the Bedrock version, by sideloading and emulating the Android version of Bedrock, which includes a 7+ step process, including already having an Android device and already having a Microsoft account on which to purchase the game, rebooting the Steam Deck into desktop mode, downloading special script files, and using the Linux terminal, and a whole bunch of fussing around. Even then, it apparently only mostly works okay. But hey, if you've got a kid who really needs to play the Bedrock edition because that's where his mates are hanging out in multiplayer worlds and whatnot, then you can get it done. But just for the sake of clarity, yes, you can run Bedrock on SteamOS that way if you want to jump through all those hoops and be stuck with the inherent limitations of the Android version, while on the Ally, it's 2 steps: direct install from the pre-installed Xbox app and press play. Just wanted to address that because I've had a few people come to me and say, hey, did you know? And I did know, I just didn't mention it because, well, it's a faff, it's a workaround, it's not ideal. I want to be clear here, I'm not saying any of this to poop on the Steam Deck or try to bait the Steam Deck head fanboys into an infantile, reactive fanboy style, console war rage. We're all on the same team here, PC Master Race Gaming, And I do personally like the Steam Deck in concept and in execution. I love what it's doing for chipping away at the default Windows monopoly over PC gaming, but it's also true that chipping away at it is not the same as having solved the issues. Linux gaming still only accounts for 1.3% of gamers on Valve's own platform, never mind everything else, and while it is growing slowly, month over month, thanks in very large part to the Steam Deck specifically, it's still a very low priority target for many devs, and of course, as we've spoken about here, it does nothing to solve the issues of the ginormous back catalogue available to PC gamers, which, to be fair, can even cause issues on modern Windows versions for a few classics. Shout out in the down below if you've got a classic version of a game you really, really love on Windows, but just doesn't run on Windows 10 or 11 anymore and, needs like Windows 7 or some clownish crap. And of course, nor does any of this help with games that don't exist on Steam's own store, which is a whole other issue on SteamOS. Can be done, but again, it's a bunch of hoop jumping and workarounds and whatnot. And while as much as I begrudge Windows being the default monopoly for PC gaming, it is still the best place for PC gamers to be and will be for a long time yet, unfortunately. Match that alongside the Ally's naturally better performance, being a more modern hardware platform and AMD architecture and significantly better screen and better resolution. It's foolish to not make these comparisons and point out how much better the Ally is in several ways. And it's also true, there are devices out there that are better than the Ally in some ways, but those devices are from nothing brands you've never heard of, weird little Chinese brands and also rans and wannabes and stuff like that. The Ally is important because it's a device like this from a major, well-known global brand with a long history behind it already. That's what makes the Ally important in all of this. And believe you me, Asus and the ROG branding will not be the only example of this from a major brand going forward. I guarantee you the others are working on stuff as well. Even Microsoft has recognized the importance of such devices. Apparently they're working behind the scenes fiddling with some ideas of a more handheld-friendly, touchscreen-friendly version of Windows 11 interface. But all of that is in the future. What I've shown you is what's happening right now, what can be done right now, and what you can do on your Ally right now, well, in a couple of weeks if you decide to buy one. All I can tell you is this is what my experience is like right now. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you as always to the patrons scrolling above there. I am Blotty, and we'll catch you next time.